welcome back in. Today we're discussing our Week 6 must-start defenses and kickers of the week. Let's go ahead and get started with our top defenses of the week. We're going to start with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Eagles defense is currently the DST 10 and are averaging 8.3 fantasy points per game. Yes, a lot of this is because of the 2 touchdowns they've been able to score because they currently only have 7 sacks, which actually ranks 25th among all defenses. However, they do have 7 turnovers and now face a Giants offense that has turned the ball over at the 4th highest rate, and they have allowed the 6th most fantasy points to opposing defenses. So let's move over to the Rams. Now, last week, we all thought the Rams defense was a great play, myself included. Well, never underestimate a Kyle Shanahan offense because the Rams ended up scoring -2 fantasy points. So that was awesome. But we are a forward-thinking show, and let's talk about this week and talk about their matchup against the Ravens. Now, it looks like Lamar Jackson probably won't play, but it wouldn't shock me if they try to rush him back. And despite having a bye next week, but with their record, it wouldn't shock me if Lamar Jackson were to play. But we saw last week what this Texas defense was able to do to this offense. Cooper Rush was sacked 1 time, turned the ball over 3 times. The Texans were a number 5 overall scoring defense. I think the Rams, contingent on the fact that Lamar Jackson doesn't play, are an easy top 3 defense for me this week against this offense that looks like a shell of itself without Lamar Jackson. So let's go over some of our streaming options. We're going to start with the Green Bay Packers, the best matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Packers are rostered in 41% of leagues. And after an extremely rough game against the Cowboys, come off their Week 5 bye to face a really bad Bengals offense. The Bengals have allowed a pressure on 22.7% of dropbacks, which ranks 6th worst. To make matters worse, the Bengals have turned the ball over 11 times, which is the most by any offense through 5 weeks. Unless they change, the Bengals are a team that we are going to target every week with their fantasy defenses, as they've allowed the most fantasy points to opposing defenses through 5 weeks. So look for the Packers to get back on track this week. Next up, let's move over to the New England Patriots, rostered only 16% of leagues. And I feel like I've had them on this video at least 2 or 3 times already to start the year. And I keep hearing how bad this defense is. According to people on Twitter, they have now stacked 3 top 7 performances in 3 of their last 4 games and have now scored 7 or more fantasy points in every game but 1. Next up is a matchup against the Saints on the road. The Saints have yielded the 15th most sacks, but have done a good job limiting turnovers to this point. They rank near the bottom of the league in turnover rate, but I will say I do think this is a very safe play because the Saints are not an offense that scores a lot of points, so you don't have to worry about that as they rank 28th in points scored per drive. So also, I think the Patriots are more than just a this week play because after this, they get a matchup against the Titans and the Browns. So Patriots, I think, are very good, not just short term, but also a relatively long term ad as well. Lastly, let's move over to the Tennessee Titans. I think most people probably scoff at the idea of streaming the Titans defense, but they're currently rostered in less than 1% of leagues, despite being the DST 17 in fantasy points per game. Next up is a phenomenal matchup against the Raiders, and more so, really, Geno Smith have been awful through 5 weeks of the season. Geno Smith has been sacked 16 times, which is the 5th most. They've also turned the ball over 10 times already and trail only the Bengals. And the Titans actually rank top 12 in creating turnovers, as they have created turnover on 10% of offensive drives so far. The Titans are in a great spot this week, and I actually really like them as a streaming option that is widely available. I would be shocked if anybody said they're not available in your league, unless you're in like a 32-team league or something like that. So, anyways, keep it moving here, and let's move over to our kickers. First thing I wanted to say is Spencer Schrader, the number 1 overall scoring kicker heading into Week 5, suffered a season-ending ACL and MCL tear, so his season is done. We'll have to wait and see who the replacement will be. Now, there has been some rumors that maybe it's Younghoe Koo, who is on the Giants practice squad right now. And if true, one of the best offensive environments and would be a very solid ad moving forward. All right, let's move over to some of our streaming options, and we're going to start with Matt Gay. Gay has now produced 3 straight weeks of top 10 performances and is currently the kicker 7, averaging 10 fantasy points per game. While there has been some inconsistency with him, as he's converted just 75% of his field goals, what's been promising, though, has been that he leads all kickers in field goals of 40-plus yards and ranks 6th in field goals of 50-plus yards. Furthermore, the Commanders have the 2nd highest applied team total this week, and also have the highest game total on this slate. So Matt Gay continues to be one of the best kickers who is widely available. Let's keep moving here. We're going to move over to Joshua Karty, who's only rostered in 25% of leagues. Karty has struggled at times this season as he's converted just 75% of his field goals, and he's already missed 2 PATs as well. Now, his lack of deep field goals has also been a little bit of a problem, which is why he ranks as kicker 17. But this is simply a matchup play for me against a Ravens defense that have yielded the 5th most fantasy points to opposing kickers. Keep moving here. Let's move over to Joey Slye. The Titans that now have been an absolute dumpster fire offensively for most of the year, but the most consistent piece of their offense has actually been their kicker, Joey Slye. Slye is averaging 11.2 fantasy points per game, which is actually tied with Brandon Aubrey as the kicker four. Now, due to the Titans' issues scoring touchdowns, it has actually allowed Slye to kick 17 field goals, which is easily the most in the league. He's converted 76.5% of his attempts, but is tied with Kaimi Fairbairn with the most field goals of 50 plus yards and leads all kickers in field goals of 40 or more yards. He has now scored 11 or more fantasy points in every game but one when they were held scoreless, and he missed 2 field goals. And next up is a dome matchup on the road against the Raiders, who have allowed the 8th most fantasy points to opposing kickers. Lastly, let's move over to Eddy Pineiro, who has been an absolute dog since taking over for Jake Moody as the kicker for the 49ers. He leads the league with 11.5 fantasy points per game, and he's already kicked 5 field goals of 40 or more yards and is tied for 11th with 11 field goals already. He's also converted all of his attempts. Pineiro figures to be a weekly top 12 kicker moving forward. It should be rostered in way more than just 2% of leagues. Next up for the 49ers, a matchup against the Bucs. This game has a healthy 46.5 point total, and I expect that total to probably continue to rise as the week moves on. That being said, let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions, whether that's streaming defenses, whether that's streaming kickers. If any questions you may have, let me hear them in the comment section below. See you on the next one. Bye.